Welcome to the board wrap-up for January 2015. The Ponca City Board of Education meeting for their January meeting, first meeting of the new year. We've got Superintendent Dr. David Pennington with us. And Dr. Pennington, I understand it was a pretty short meeting,
Right.
and I'll just kind of leave it open to you to hit some highlights.
Well, it was a short meeting and kind of typical for the beginning of the year. And to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of us, like most of the public yesterday, was interested in what the first, what did we call it? The National Championship in Division I football, whatever
First playoff.
Whatever the title was, we kind of were anxious to get home to see the ball game, kind of like everybody else was. I don't know how that'll play in the future, but for the first one, so when we put our agenda together, there were some things that we left off till next month just so we could get out of there a little bit quicker last night. Really the thing that we did that was different. There were two things. First of all, January is always board member recognition month, and so we recognized our 5 board members for their service to the children of Ponca City and to this community. And as I said last night, it is a thankless job. It's not generally people are more often to talk to you when they're unhappy than they are when they are happy. Our people do a great job. They do a lot more than you see on Monday night, and they do it free. And I think that's, how many of us would volunteer to give up 60 Monday nights in our lifetime to serve somebody else's kids, and that's really what those people do. So they really, all 5 of those: Marvin Clark, David Kincaid, Robin Riley, Don Newsom, Judy Troop, deserve a pat on the back, and it'd be nice if some of our viewers would either shoot them an email or the next time you see them, just say thanks for serving. Just say we appreciate what you do for us. The second thing we did is we joined what is a couple of hundred school districts, will eventually be probably every school district in the state, in a resolution in support of an initiative that was launched by the Oklahoma School Board Association and the Cooperative Council of School Administrators, which was a joint venture to create a vision for the public schools of the state of Oklahoma. For about 2 years, we had a group of people, school board members, business leaders, school administrators, parents, teachers that met and talked about education. I won't bother you with all the points of the resolution the board approved last night, but in general, what the resolution says is that we need to support local control. That decisions about schools are made best when they're made in the local community. It's funny what local control means. When you talk to a school board, local control means the Board of Education making decisions. When you're a member of state government and you're talking to the federal government, it means state government making decisions. We believe state government decisions for them generally are better than federal decisions, but we definitely believe and support local control. We think the resolution calls for looking at the initiatives we have to improve schools and making sure those initiatives are implemented through an Oklahoma lens. Yesterday we got a new state superintendent of public instruction as of noon. If you go back and when they write the story about Janet Barisi, I think one of those chapters will be trying to implement somebody else's reforms, taking a Florida reform package, bringing it to Oklahoma, and not modifying it to fit our state. And I don't think that's ever a good idea. And probably the other, and that our curriculum needs to be enriching. It needs to provide opportunities for students. One of the things there's lots of talk about assessment. There's going to be a lot more talk about assessment over the next 6 to 8 months as Congress tries to finally put in new federal legislation. We've been operating under the same law since 2010, what we call No Child Left Behind. They want to redo that and fix it. And a big part of that debate is going to be about assessment. It's really it's a tough deal because we all want schools to be accountable. Okay, well, how do you make schools accountable? Well, the easiest way to do it is to measure student learning, that's assessment. But the problem with assessment, when you use assessment to evaluate, it narrows the curriculum. There's this in research, there's this idea called Campbell's Law. And what basically Campbell's Law says is when you're involved in a social studies kind of environment, when you're looking at people in society, whatever you whatever you decide to measure is going to narrow whatever you do, so that all you focus on is what you measure. Good example, and this is where Campbell's research comes from. If you tell heart doctors that you're going to evaluate them, you're going to decide whatever it is, how you're going to rate them, how you're going to compensate them, based upon how long their patients live, then heart doctors will quit treating patients with severe heart problems, because why treat somebody who's very ill, because that person might die on me and my rating's going to go down. Well, who needs to see the best cardiologist? The people with the most severe problems. And so that's what happens when any time you try to kind of artificially decide how you're going to measure something. And this works, whether it works in the medical profession, it works in that Campbell's Law is true in medicine, it's true in education, it's anything that involves people. So when you assess, when you give students tests in reading and math, your schools are going to focus most of their time and attention on reading and math. Well, reading and math are important, but they're not more important than social studies. They're not more important than science. They're not more important than art. They're not more important than music. They're not more important than PE. And so, if we're not careful, what we do is we end up narrowing our curriculum. We narrow our focus, so that the things that makes school exciting and makes school fun, we don't do anymore, because we're so wrapped up in assessments. And so this resolution called for that we ought to look at assessment. And the final thing it said is we've got to look at how we fund our schools. We need to recruit and retain teachers, and some of that is compensation. But we have to look at how we fund our schools. I've been in education for almost 40 years now. All that except for 7 has been in the state of Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma. I went to school for 12 years in Oklahoma public schools. And the thing that's been consistent is that if you go back and look and see where education funding was in Oklahoma back when I started school in 1960 and when I graduated in 1973, we're somewhere in the bottom 3 or 4 of how we fund our schools. Doesn't matter if it's Democratic administration, Republican administration. We got up to about 45 or 44 back when we first did 1017. Now we're back down to 48. And it would be different if we were 48th and we had class sizes at 20 and we had all the professionals we needed to work with kids, if we had all the counselors and all the therapists, if we had all the specialists to help us with reading and math, and we had the money and the curriculum to really create creative, inventive science programs that attracted kids. We could offer as much PE as they needed, but we don't have those things. Other states do. And why do they have them? Because they fund their schools better. So we have to figure that out, or I guess the alternative would be if our elected officials would quit playing games and just come out and say, you know what, we don't care where we are. We're going to spend this amount of money in education. We're not spending another dime. You guys figure it out. And that's kind of what we've done. We kind of do that. So that was kind of that's basically the highlights of our board meeting. Pretty short and sweet.
Let's Let's talk a bit about the change in our superintendent. Barisi's out. Joy Hoffmeister yesterday took over, and I know you were a proponent of Miss Hoffmeister.
Right.
You agreed with a lot of the things that she campaigned for. And I know it takes time, but maybe initially, what are some of the things you see her bringing to the state of Oklahoma with her ideas? Will she make any changes? Will she have time to make any changes before this school year is over?
Well, I don't think she'll make any. I don't know that we'll see any dramatic changes before this school year's over. I think the main thing that Joy Hoffmeister brings to the table is a collaborative spirit. People talk a lot about engaging the public, or we're going to bring business and education to the table. But I think Joy is serious about that, and I think that she is uniquely situated that she can moderate those discussions. Typically, what happens is when you bring business and education to the table, is either business dominates the conversation by fussing at schools and telling them when they're failing, or schools dominate the conversation telling the business community why they're wrong. That doesn't serve anybody's purpose. We need to be able to have a healthy discussion. We need to be able to let the business community talk to us about the needs that they see for their employees. But we also have to help them understand that education is more than training somebody to go to work for them. I mean, an educated, when you think about what is an educated purpose, what's the purpose of education? Well, the purpose of education is to improve somebody's quality of life. And you do that by opening their eyes to all the possibilities that exist in the world. You do that by teaching them to read so that all knowledge is at their fingertips. You teach them how to think scientifically, so they use logic as they think and as they reason, so that they're more likely to make better decisions. Whether they do that and choose to be an engineer, or whether they do that and choose to be a plumber, or they choose to be a computer programmer, or they choose to be a forester. Those are the decisions that people have to make. And we just need to provide the education so they can make the best decisions. Unfortunately, what happens now is, we get caught in this. We get caught up in, you look at this certain part of our population and not doing well, and we want to place blame. The reality is that there's lots of factors that contribute to whatever adult somebody becomes. Is school an important part of that? You bet it is. But so is what kind of jobs are available in a community. What kind of paycheck do business people provide their employees? Do they provide them with enough money that they can live a comfortable life, or do they have to work 2 or 3 jobs? Well, that's a factor. How is the government? Can they provide enough safety and security so people aren't afraid? Can they keep drugs out of our communities? All those things play a role. The church plays a role in families, and do people get married and stay together? Do they have children out of wedlock? And do they abandon those children and those mothers? All that stuff comes together, and we have to, and we can't ignore those things. We can't say it doesn't matter that a child lives in a neighborhood where he doesn't feel safe. We can't say it doesn't matter that a child lives in an abusive home. We can't say it doesn't matter that children live in some parts of our state where illegal drug use is rampant. And we can't ignore that. We want to, we want to ignore it, but we can't, because it affects the education that kids get, which affects the future of our state. So we have to have those conversations. And I think Joy will do that. I think probably the first thing we'll see, I think you'll see her advocate for some either delays or modification in the rollout of the TLE, which is the teacher evaluation system. And I also think that you'll see her work very quickly on making changes to the grade card for schools, and incorporate some of the research that came out of OU and OSU. I think she'll do those things pretty quickly. The first thing she's got to do is she's got to staff her department. There's lots of job vacancies, and then I think lots of people saw the article in the paper last week where Superintendent Breesing made some last-minute appointments where she moved some people up in the organization, which I thought was very strange. Eventually I will leave the superintendency here at Ponca City. I don't think that you'll see me, unless the new superintendent is a part of the staff, I don't think you'll see me be the person that hires 5 new high school principals the day before I walk out the door, unless I've closely collaborated with whoever my successor is going to be. So I thought that was kind of odd that she did that, and I think it's almost like one more chance to poke Joy in the eye a little bit before she walks out the door.
She wonders why she wasn't reelected.
Oh.
I wonder if Hoffmeister has the ability to negate all of those.
Well, she does.
Yeah.
I mean, she runs the department, and some of those people may be good people, and it may have been the logical and best thing to do. I really don't know. I just know that the State Department is in disarray, and a lot of people have been fleeing since the election, before the election, and then since the election. And so she's got to rebuild that department, and that's going to. And she's been studying it for a month. I would think that we'll see some announcements here in the next week to 10 days of a chief of staff and communications director, and maybe some of the directors of some of the accreditation, some of those other areas.
Well, it's hard enough to run your school district without the top level having a lack of leadership, so I'm sure that will change, and probably we'll see next fall semester, you'll see some things that she will implement that will move into our schools.
We just hopefully find somebody to answer questions.
Yeah.
That's the biggest frustration for us for the last 4 years, has been getting questions answered, and making sure that whenever the State Department sends out information that it's correct. I can't tell you over the last 4 years how many times we've gotten a piece of information, and within the next 72 hours it's changed 5 times. And that just, just drives you crazy.
Absolutely. Anything else? Happy New Year to you. And
Phil, the other thing I talked about, I know that there was a lot of people, because I have a lot of people ask me about it, right before we broke for Christmas, we had a special board meeting to take the preliminary steps of filing a lawsuit against the state of Oklahoma, having to do with a school funding issue. We have not filed the lawsuit. We've been promised that the State Department is going to fix this problem. We thought we were going to get the new information last Friday, but they've hit a couple of snags, and so we were scheduled to talk about school funding last night, and we didn't, because we did not have our new midterm allocation notices. So once those come out, obviously we'll talk about it further, and at a future date we can sit down and I'll kind of walk your viewers through exactly what happened and how we got to this point, and how I think this will affect the Ponca City schools from this point forward.
very good. Thanks for your time, Dr. Pennington. And that's the January 2015 Board Review.